All right. So we are done with the housekeeping. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Miriam Watson. I have a ninth grade daughter at PCS, as well as a college freshman who's studying astrophysics at UT Austin, and she graduated from PCS just this past spring. So we're really excited for her. I volunteer to coordinate parent education because I believe we're stronger individually and as a community when we have opportunities to actively engage with one another, to acquire new parenting skills. And I feel like when we're able to come together to share ideas and provide each other with support, we are all partners in creating a community we can feel proud of. So everything good? Okay, someone probably just needs to mute. So before we get to the talk, we do have a calendar of upcoming PVA events I'd like to share. We decided to offer more frequent parent education opportunities since connecting in so many other ways has vanished this year. It seems like coming together more regularly to learn and to share our experiences can help all of us feel less isolated, as well as giving us a chance to learn from one another and to support one another. So we have 6 parent education events planned for 2020 and 2021. Our April event didn't make it on the list yet, but I can assure you it will be a fun event that you won't want to miss. It'll be a very interactive event. So you'll be learning about that more in the new year, something to look forward to. And it won't be related to parent education. It's just going to be parent fun. So moving on to tonight and our agenda. So we've gone through the first part of this agenda, and we're going to now move into what you're here for. So Carrie is going to talk for about 30 minutes. Afterwards, she'll take questions, and then we'll have time to engage in sharing our own successful experiences in this challenging environment with distance learning. Our main objective is for each of us to leave with a few new ideas to try, and also to feel more connected with each other and our PCS parent tribe, which is really what we are. We don't get to see each other much. And we would ask that during the presentation, if you can make sure you're kept on mute. And if you have a burning question while you're hearing something that Carrie's talking about, please just put it in the chat, and I will be monitoring the chat and grouping questions if there's themes. And at the end of the talk, I'll facilitate a conversation with Carrie to relay your questions so she can answer them in a hopefully in an integrated way. And then from there, we'll talk a little bit more openly, and people can just share their ideas when they feel like it without using the chat regarding strategies. So we're going to wrap up by 8, and into this next slide. For this evening, we have a few guidelines. I think I've kind of gone over these actually. So use the chat during the presentation if you have questions. Keep the questions pertinent to the topic being discussed. We definitely want to hear your own success strategies, and to focus on things you can try, not what's not working. So those two kind of go hand in hand. We could, kind of have a long session of how challenging and difficult and what do I do? But that doesn't really help us, move forward. You came to a parent education event to hopefully learn some tools, to try some new things. And so we're going to keep the energy focused on things that you can try. So if you're struggling with something, we're there with you. All of us are struggling with different components of distance learning, but try to keep the energy towards what is working and what you can share with everyone else, so that we can all try new things. All right. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker for tonight.
Just a second. Mireille is not assigned as a translator right now. So before you introduce Carrie, can we just sort that out?
Absolutely.
I can't do it from my end here.
Okay.
And Carrie, are you ready to start screen sharing? Because I can stop share and you can start.
That would be great. Please do so.
All
Okay,
right.
so how about Hillary, if I mute myself, once we get Carrie up and running and we can better understand how to get,
Okay, or make me host. Oh, I am host. I see. Okay.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
I'll try to figure that out.
Okay, so Carrie,
Um,
before you launch, I'd like to introduce you. Carrie Moyer is the Director of Special Education and the school psychologist for us at PCS, or for our children, our students, our teens. She's a licensed educational psychologist, and she's worked in special education roles supporting students in California since 2000. This is her third year at PC, and she most enjoys the opportunity to work with students with disabilities in our academically rigorous college prep environment. Carrie, we're delighted and grateful to have you with us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm just waiting for there we go. Waiting for my document to come up. I want to thank you all for your patience with our trying to hold an engaging collaborative meeting tonight via technology. And sorry, just one second. It's not wanting to share. So for some reason, it says my screen share is paused. Hillary, might you know why that's happening? I'm going to try again.
when you click share screen, make sure you.
There. Can you see?
Yeah, yeah.
So there we go. Thank you. Okay, I'm so pleased to be with you all this evening. Thank you, Miriam, for that warm introduction. You know, at PCS, we feel very strongly that we are a learning community, and the engagement and participation of our parents is something we take very seriously. So I'm so pleased that so many of you are with us this evening. I have long considered myself what was once coined to me by a superintendent I worked with as a broker of resources. And so what I'm hoping to do tonight is to offer you ideas. And my hope is that tonight what you will get is perhaps some affirmation of some things you are doing well in the midst of what kids need today, and hopefully some new or refreshed ideas about new ways that you can try things as this distance learning era persists or comes to an end and transitions away. Who knows? What I do want to say is you as parents are working very, very hard, and we very much affirm that. And we as educators are working hard, and we know that you know that. And quite frankly, I know any one person who feels like they're navigating this season with 100% efficacy or success. And so I also want to have us take the opportunity to just breathe and recognize that it's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for all of you. It's a challenge for all of us. It's a very big challenge for our students. So I'd like to tell you that I am very much appreciative of all of you who participated in the survey. I read through all of your responses, including your comments and your suggestions, and I wanted to share with you a little bit of that in a moment. I wanted to start also with this quote by John Ruskin, who's an educator and author, who says, "Education is painful, continual, and difficult work to be done in kindness by watching, by warning, by praise, but above all, by example." And I share this with you because I think the best way that we can support our kids today is to take care of ourselves and make sure that we are mindful of our own needs in this really challenging time. So I want to leave you tonight with a request to be kind to yourselves in the midst of all of this. Feel good about what you're doing well, try something new, and just be gentle with yourselves. Your well-being is really going to be critical. So on the feedback of your survey results, first I wanted to share with you generalities of what the survey results from your input included. And in general, I wanted you to know that most of the responders reported they're able to talk with their teen in a positive way about school, about progress at school. Most of the responders reported they're able to talk with their teen about learning behaviors and motivation without too much conflict. Mind you, we're working with teenagers, we're all aware of that. Most responders reported they are able to gauge their teen's overall emotional well-being pretty effectively. And most responders reported they believe their teens' peer interactions, generally speaking, are healthy. Most of the responders said, so there was a wider range of the following. Many of you feel like your teens are having time with peers outside of class time in a healthy way. Many are not. So that's a challenge for many of our families, is finding ways to get our kids to engage in a way that's healthy and risk-free. Some are finding success with that, some are not. And we acknowledge that every family has to make their own choices to keep your students and yourselves safe. Most responders reported that what they'd like out of tonight are strategies to support their teens' overall well-being and strategies for improving learning skills in general. So that's what we did. As I read through all of your comments, I categorized them, I correlated them, and generalizing them, and I have designed tonight's conversation to meet some of those in a general way while offering practical suggestions that you might try. And I'm hoping that you'll come away with perhaps a new idea. As a broker of resources, I feel like if I have given you 10 ideas and 6 you're already doing and 3 don't work for your family, but 1 has been useful to you, then I've done my job. So hopefully we'll get to that tonight. I am a psychologist and I think in pictures, and I think it's helpful to have a structure of pictures to build a conversation around. And I sort of like that Miriam started this with navigating. I'm going to work with that sort of aqua theme. And we're going to think about this journey of school, of student learning and success at school, as if it were your teen is in a kayak on a river. So building communication strategies and building overall well-being and motivation for learning skills comes with a goal of navigating down the river successfully. We all know rivers have smooth parts, they have rough parts, they have rapids. I often say to families that PCS, with its academic rigor and challenging curriculum, can be, for some students, a class 5 rapids of educational experience. And so we want to talk about ways in which we can structure the vehicle that your student is using to navigate the river, give them strength in the paddle, and help them learn to be observant of their own skills, their own strengths, and their own goals. We build a vision, we motivate them and communicate them with them to work toward that vision, and hopefully launch them eventually into their lives as young adults with strong boats. So if you'll just indulge me in this visual, we're going to talk about strong boats, effective paddles, and teaching our children observation skills. So the boat is the structure that you are creating and that you are helping your student create for themselves, within which they can ride the currents of the educational experience. And the power, the paddle of the paddle, think of the paddle as the power that the student has in order to navigate the currents of the river of educational experience. And the helmet and goggles as observation, students' self-awareness. We need to be building in our teens an ability to sort of begin to understand who they are, what their strengths are, what their challenges are, and what their ability is to speak out when they need to advocate for themselves. So paddle is structure, kayak is structure, power is paddle, and the observation is the goggles and the helmet. So let's talk about structure. The most important thing I think we can do as parents and as educators is to create structure for our student within which they can not only rest and feel secure in the plan and purpose that they have in moving through education, but also plan for and organize that structure in order to keep their learning skills moving forward and growing over time. So I invite you to think about the structures that you have in your family with your teen and the ways in which you've done that to build, and the ways in which you've communicated that with your student to build a sense of security and efficacy in moving down the current of the educational experience. So how have you structured the vessel that carries your teen through this time? And when I talk about structure, I invite you to consider what's the learning workspace that your student has. It's very, very important in this distance learning era that your student's workspace be as dedicated as you can make it in your home. Mind you, we understand everyone's home is different. Your student might have a desk area that's only for learning. That might not be the case in your family. But if you can dedicate a space or a box of organizational tools for your student, then that's structuring a learning space in some area, in some way. Your Wi-Fi, if you have challenges, you know who to reach out. That'd be Ms. Daniels. Making sure that your student has paper if they need it, pencils nearby, and structuring that space that's a dedicated space will be very, very helpful for making sure that your teen isn't also drifting off on other kinds of activities that might be nearby. So if your student is sitting in front of a couch and with a computer in front of them and the TV is nearby, it might be just really easy to turn the television on. But if your student instead is away from that area and has a structured place in a quieter area, in a desk area, at a window, around a wall, in some way that works in your home, that structured learning space that's dedicated will help your students' mind focus on learning when they're in that space. I also invite you to consider the daily routine and structuring that carefully so that it's repeatable, so that your student knows the routine and can rely on the routine and doesn't have to be thinking about what they're doing in this moment versus what they're going to do in that moment. So those daily routines may vary in your home, but have your teen know when they're getting up, when they're having a little bit of exercise, when they're eating, and when they're sitting down to study time. Daily routine, including the breaks away from study time and coming back to study time. And then what's happening in your family after the school hours. Is there a structure for getting up and moving and exercise, a structured dinner time, structuring the evening hours in a way that will help your teen wind down their brain and get ready for sleep? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So what is the daily routine in your home? And I would encourage you to make that a visual. Make it as routine as you can, or put components into the daily routine that are very structured and as much as you can in your family, and make it visual. Put a family agenda on a wall or on the refrigerator, or stickies in certain areas, or on a calendar, or in some way that works for you, structuring that routine in such a way that your child knows what you're expecting for them to be doing at certain times, and always building in free time. I would recommend the same thing for your weekly routine as part of structuring the vessel your student is using for their learning experience. What's the weekly routine like? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, school is till now, and then at this time in the day we eat, this time in the day they have after school activities. On Saturdays, my student's free to do this, but we have a family time here, which moves me into the next one. There are a number of authors that suggest that some kind of family ritual will anchor your student to you, and over time provide natural opportunities for family conversations where you can sort of open up the door and have a free dialogue around how your student is doing. In one of the main categories I heard in the requests and comments that came in on the survey was how to communicate and how to build more strategies for communication and more strategies for well-being. Opening a free time that's regular, that's something that your student enjoys, that's that you can rely on and your student relies on every week over time will open doors for communication around that. So suggestions might be Thursday afternoons after school, you go for a Jamba Juice and you just sit around and hang out, or a family walk on the beach, or a family game of, my kids are older, I don't know what games people play, but maybe not a video, I wouldn't recommend a video game, but a board game or a puzzle or a trip to the bookstore, if that's safe, but something that's built around your family. Maybe you cook dinner together on Thursday nights or Sunday morning breakfast, but some kind of family ritual that builds your bond as a family and gives your student another piece of structure in their week that they can rely on. And then the last one is, I would say, modeling structure in your life for your family. Let your teen know. So this is my time for my run, or this is my time to go have tea with the neighbor, or some sort of way that you're gently modeling that you too are structuring specific required times into your week that you do in order to take care of yourself, or to take, maybe it's when you do your bills or a call that you have for work, but model that. Let your teen know that you have bits of that in your life as well. Excuse me. So structure is the kayak, the vessel that your student is on. Power is the paddle. When I talk with families about teenagers, we're always talking about power. So adolescents are in a developmental stage where they are beginning the process of learning how to build autonomy. They're exploring who they are. They want to control things. I've had teenagers. I know they want more control than so often we feel is appropriate to give them. But think carefully about where you can give your teen power, let them paddle their own boat, and where you need to make the decision. And sometimes, I think especially in this era, in this distance learning era, we parents need to step back in and make some decisions that might not be popular with our teens. And I would encourage you to think those through carefully and decide where you're going to give power and where you're going to hold on to those things in order to keep your child healthy and safe and on the track to navigate the current effectively. I often encourage families to agree on a plan in advance. So routine, reinforcement, the ways in which you can support for your team. Here's what we're going to do now, and get them motivated to do so by agreeing with them, first of all, on what the new plan is going to be. So we're going to build a new structure. I had a friend whose success with her kids, they decided on what the 7s were. They had 7 things they needed to do in the morning. And it was a list of certain things. And all they said was, here's the list of morning stuff. And the student would come to the parent and say, got my morning stuff done. The parent would reinforce that. And not only by saying, great job, honey, I'm really glad you did that. But if the student did that on their own, 4 out of 5 days a week, they did something that at the student's request that reinforced that behavior with them. So if you agree on a plan like that in advance and you get your student buy-in, may take a little work. It's not as easy as it sounds, takes a little work. But if you agree on a plan together and get your students buy-in and then reinforce over time, when the student does those agreements on their own initiative, you'll find you'll find your child begins to feel like they have some power and control in that process. And then when you have to take power back, or the things that you need to hold power onto, there's a balance, because you're giving autonomy where you can, there's a balance in taking autonomy back when you need to. And I know that that opens a wide range of situations, and we can talk about that a bit more. But the idea is being very thoughtful as parents about how we can give control and how we keep control. And communicating that with your student in advance will make that most successful. Around those expectations, I would like to very much suggest what I do with many of our families at PCS, that you agree in advance that my suggestion is once a week, given how your student's doing, you can make that decision as a family. Once a week at an agreed upon time, your student comes to you and says, here's my Canvas, here's what I got done, here's what I need to work on next week. Just letting you know, here's how I'm on top of it. And you don't react to that, but you reinforce that your teen is doing that with you. And you give them the power to do that on their initiative, and you reinforce that in a positive way. Will keep you from having to nag and finding out later that they're behind on things or they're struggling with things. And they can come to you and say to you, I want help with this, or I'm just letting you know, in a way that works for your family. So what your expectations are, if you agree to all of that with your student ahead of time in a calm, positive time, in a way that you say, we're going to build a new structure for communication, and here's how I want you to have control over that. And work with that with your teen, and it will help them buy into it. There's research that says if you get teens to agree to a plan ahead of time, and it used to be that we used to think if you write it out and sign it, teens would follow it more effectively. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but I can help you structure that at some other time if you'd like that. The other thing I very much want to confirm is that you use affirming language when your child is following through with that plan, and you reinforce it in both with affirming language and perhaps some tangible way that works within the values of your family. And know that those kinds of plans take a little time to take hold, and you might need to tweak it here and there, but communicating with your teen about creating a plan that gives them power will give them an opportunity to have buy-in in the plan and let them offer to you pieces of that. So now you have thought about structure of the vessel of your daily routine, your weekly routine. You're giving your student some opportunities to communicate with you on a regular basis, how they're handling their school and if they need help. You're agreeing on a way to give them some power of some pieces, and also able to say, we're going to keep power on some pieces. And that will help to structure and to create a vessel that will carry them down the river of this learning experience. The other piece I want to talk about is being receptive to your teen advocating, in giving them and opening a door for them to advocate for themselves. Many parents are really good at hearing when their teens are saying, I need something to be different. Often parents, especially in this crazy time of stress, would react quickly. And I encourage you to teach yourself as parents, if you don't already do this, to stop and think for a few moments, take a pause, take a break before you respond to something that you're not comfortable with, that your teen is sharing with you. And give it a few moments before you respond, in order to give your teen the sense that they are being heard. And I'm going to share that a little bit more about that. Also, find moments when your teen can choose their own outcome. So give them choices and opportunities to have power, again, in all the ways that work for your family, and being willing to make choices for your teen's wellness and take that power back when you need to. The number one thing I want to share with you about that is about sleep, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. So the third area we like to talk about is observation. One of the things that we work with a lot at PCS is trying to teach teens to be aware of their own strengths and challenges, being aware of what stresses them, being able to recognize stress, and being able to choose an activity or a behavior to help work through that stress. So many of you may know about the term of mindfulness. Some may not, but mindfulness is simply the ability to know how I'm feeling. We also call it metacognition, what I'm thinking, and to be able to move through that in a way that's thoughtful. Sometimes it takes self-calming strategies. Sometimes it takes mapping out goals and visions, but to teach the teen to not be rattled by the boulders and the currents and the rapids that come through, but to recognize I'm stressed because I'm in these rapids. I have 15 things due and I don't have them all done, and I'm stressed and I'm reacting. If you can help teach your teen to calm themselves and teach themselves to understand what they're feeling and what they're thinking in the moment, you can then teach them to move forward with what's the choice I need to make right now. So mindfulness is a very, very helpful personal practice for both parents and to teach teens. We do quite a bit of that at PCS. Well, some of us do. And it's a really helpful way to help your student not be reactive to every stress that comes down the road or down the river. The other thing, another suggestion is to create a communication tool. Many families find it helpful to have a journal. I have recommended this often with younger students, especially for developing writing skills. Is the idea is you get a spiral notebook or any other kind of notebook and you keep it in a spot in your family. And you just put a note in there to your student. If you have more than one student, each one has a spiral. Excuse me. You just put a note in, the student responds to it, or the student puts a note in, you respond to it. You never talk about what's in the journal. It's simply an open way to communicate what's happening in your life and communicate and let your teen communicate. Really stressed time. And let's face it, who's
Carrie,
not?
Carrie,
Yeah.
I think we lost you for a few moments.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so if you can, let's see. You were just talking about the spiral notebook and the usefulness of it. You described how it can be used, and that's when we lost you just after that.
Can you hear me now?
Perfectly.
Okay. Well, I don't know what that was. I didn't see anything, but okay. Thank you, Miriam. And jump in again, please, if you lose me. I don't think anything's moving. So spiral notebook journals is one idea. And if you want more information, we can talk about that later. The other thing I was suggesting is write your teen notes, note cards. Oh, now I'm hearing me. Did something change? Oh, okay. Now it's gone. Can you all hear me okay? I was echoing myself there for a moment, but it's gone. So I'm going to keep moving and I'll let you, Miriam, tell me if something's happening. Okay.
Sounds good.
Great. So in terms of communication and affirmation, one thing I think is really, really helpful is to just write your teen notes. Make your affirmations specific. Hey, you got that history paper in on time and I'm so proud of you. Leave it in under their pillow, stick it on their workstation, never say a word about it, but quiet little notes that say, don't make things up. Teens will see right through that and you'll lose all your credibility. But if you see something, affirm it in a little note. Old-fashioned thing that works wonders with teens these days is just hearing little notes from their parents that they think they're doing things well, particularly valuable in this time of stress, where there's so much going on and we are all so stressed. Taking 2 minutes to write your teen a note and stick it somewhere they'll find it later is a really helpful way to keep your communication open, and also for an opportunity for them to know that you have good observation of what they're doing and will help them think about and observe that they have done something successfully. So teach your teen to think about what they can control and what they cannot is another really important tool. This comes into play very critically in social situations. And I could spend a whole evening talking about this, but getting drawn into the drama of social situations is really, really common. I wish we were together because I'd ask you to raise your hands if you've ever had to talk your teen through some kind of drama that's going in a friendship group. But teaching your teen to think about what they can control and what they cannot. I'm going to share with you something I only use this with teens that I have relationships with, but I often say, not my circus, not my monkeys. That's just a phrase that I like to use with teens that says, you don't have to be in charge of what she is saying to him and what he is doing with that guy. You don't have to be in charge of that. We can only be in charge of what we can respond to and how we can react and think about a situation. That also opens I could go on a whole tangent down a rabbit trail on that alone, because teens really need you to just gently, firmly say, hold on a second. How much of that is your job? How much of that is your responsibility? Can you control that? Then let it go. I know that's easier said than done. Teaching your teens to consider their strengths. We at PCS often will ask students when we're in meetings, what are your strengths? What do you feel you're good at? It's one of the first things that I do when I'm working with a student in evaluation or in therapy. What do you think you're good at? And if they can't come up with something they're good at, I ask them what they enjoy doing or what class do they like best, and start there. But getting your teen to verbalize what they're good at and then verbalize what they'd like to get better at is a way to teach your teen to be observant of themselves and begin to develop and not just who they are as they grow older, but to understand and be aware of who they are as they grow older. And also know that teens are trying out different personalities. So it may change, but getting them to verbalize it will help you and help them in communicating about it. So I want to share with you a couple of things, but mostly I'm going to go through what are my top 12 tips for motivating and communicating with your teenager. And you'll notice the top 2 are to listen. We do so much speaking at our teens, even in talking with them and listening to them. Often we, as parents, want to counter what they say with either an affirmation or a redirection or a correction or a response, an answer to a question. And I would encourage you to find ways to just listen and verbalize what you've heard them say to you. This phrase is so powerful. I hear that what you want is, or I hear that this is hard for you. That phrase alone will so empower your communication time with your child, especially if you don't back it up with but. So anytime you can, if you can say, I can hear that that's hard for you, let's keep talking about that and maybe come back to it later, will help your teen feel heard. The most critical thing that you can do to develop communication strategies with your student is to listen. Number 2 is listen, pause, and to keep your tone neutral. So not reacting in an anxious, stressed way to the things your teen is saying has such power with your teen. So keep your tone neutral. Unless you're using humor. I do happen to think that humor goes a long way. I didn't share this with you, but I have 2 adult sons, one who did fine in school, and one who had very significant challenges, learning disability, ADHD, auditory processing challenges. and his own personality that could sort of not follow a direction. And I used to use crazy accents.